Greetings from the Firstbeat office in Jyväskylä, Finland, and welcome to today's webinar. This is actually our first wellness webinar this year, and I'm really happy to see such a large group of listeners from different parts of the world tuning in to today's important topic, mental health and well-being in the workplace. It's great that we get to hear about this angle to well-being because our focus often tends to be on physical things, exercise, fitness, nutrition, heart rate and heart rate variability. Yet physical and mental health are so closely tied together, and obviously both eventually determine how well we really are. My name is Tiina Hoffman from Firstbeat, and I'll be hosting today's webinar, and our guest speaker Rob Stephenson is joining us from London. Few practical matters before I introduce Rob. The webinar will last 30 minutes. During the webinar, the participants are on mute, but if you have a question, you can write it in the chat, and after the presentation, we will read them out for Rob to answer. But now I'm happy to introduce today's guest, Rob Stephenson. Rob is a mental health campaigner, keynote speaker, and founder of InsideOut.org, which is a social enterprise whose mission is to showcase role models with personal experiences of mental ill health, to highlight the importance of this often silenced topic. Rob will share his own story as well as some important statistics about mental ill health, and he will also offer some ideas for how and at what levels this problem should be tackled. I met Rob a couple of years ago when he was going through the training course for Firstbeat Lifestyle Assessment, and since then Rob has utilized the lifestyle assessment as part of his work to demonstrate how a person is coping with different demands of life. He might even share a few examples of that today, but if you want to learn more about the lifestyle assessment method itself, you can check out the Firstbeat website or get in touch with us here at Firstbeat. But now I'm going to hand it over to Rob. So welcome, Rob. It's all yours.
So apologies for the delayed start, everyone, and thank you for logging in. I'm a campaigner around creating mentally healthier workplaces that are free of stigma. And I'd like to talk a little bit today about my journey that's got me to this place, but also how I then use Firstbeat in some of the talks that I do about how to balance stress with recovery. So I'm going to dive straight in. Stephenson. I am a father. I am a husband. I am a cyclist. And yes, if you're wondering from the picture, I do shave my legs. I'm a friend. I'm a son. I am a social entrepreneur. I'm a teammate. I am a DJ. I am successful. Like all of us, there are many little I's that make up the big I. No one thing defines us. And I will take questions on why I'm wearing Lycra and high-heeled shoes in the questions if there's time. But I am also bipolar. I experience bipolar disorder, which is a mental illness. And it is a mental illness that is characterized by extremes of mood, from deep, dark depression, where I cannot get out of bed, cannot look after my children, cannot do my job, to periods of mania, where I make bad decisions, bad financial decisions. And if we had a bit more time, I could tell you some stories about what it's like to live with this condition. I could tell you in my first year at university when I heard a knock at the door early evening, and I prayed that I'd lock the door because I didn't want these people to come into my room. I experienced. The funny thing was, it was two of my best friends at the time who came to take me out at the agreed time to some function or another, and I couldn't face them, and I did not know why. I could tell you on the night of my 30th birthday in a Moroccan restaurant in London, the cake being presented after a long walk around the restaurant to the head of the table to my best friend, because I was not there. I was alone in somebody else's flat, undergoing a period of depression, and I could not face being out for those celebrations. And again, if I had more time, I could tell you about when I thought it was all futile when I was 31, after being diagnosed with depression, which later became bipolar disorder, when I tried to end my life. And I tried to do that because it all felt very futile. But from that low point, with the help of friends, a support group, family, therapy, I learned to manage this condition. And for me, I worked out what I needed to do to look after my mental well-being. Exercise is really important to me. Prioritizing sleep is really important. Mindfulness works for me. Balancing stress with those moments of recovery in the day also work. I give myself a score out of 10 each day. Today I'm an 8, which is great. Tomorrow, if I'm a 7 and then a 6 the next day, I want to know why. And what could I do to change that before I get to a 4? Because if I'm a 4, then I'm going to be in bed for a few days. And we also talk about suffering with a mental ill health condition. We very rarely talk about the strengths. So for me, there are periods in my condition where I'm highly creative, where I can achieve a lot, where I don't accept the impossible. So those strengths of neurodiversity are really important to consider when we're talking about mental health, as well as the bits of mental ill health. My light bulb moment came in 2017 when I heard a chap called Jeff McDonald speak. And Jeff was talking about his experiences of anxiety and depression. And I sat there in the audience feeling shame. And the reason I felt shame was because there I am, a business owner with supportive and friendly people around me. And yet, every week where I'd go and see my therapist, I would put the word physio in my diary. Physio, for years. My team must have thought I have the worst physiotherapist in the world that cannot fix this back injury. And yet, I'm coming in on Mondays talking about 100-mile bike rides, or 160-kilometer bike rides if you're in Europe right now. And I felt dishonest. I felt like a fraud. And I saw there was another way. So I decided at this point to be open about my own condition, but also look for ways to help get involved in smashing the stigma and creating workplaces where it's okay to talk about your mental health. It's okay to talk about your mental ill health and seek help when you need it. And it's okay to prioritize your well-being. So I founded a social enterprise called Inside Out, which aims to smash the stigma by showcasing senior leaders from our workplaces who are prepared to be open about their lived experience of mental ill health and act as role models. The Duke of Cambridge, future King of England, would agree. He'd love to see more CEOs and those in positions of leadership coming out and talking about their period of mental ill health. And this is important because if you leaders are talking about their lived experience and getting behind the mental health agenda, this does two main things. It gives people permission to seek help when they need to, but it also facilitates culture change. And it enables the culture to be changed to one that prioritizes looking after your well-being. That it's okay to get those moments of recovery during the day. That it's okay if you've been on a deal or whatever it might be, 3 days to a week. So I'm delighted to say, and this is very timely, that yesterday we published our first list, or leaderboard as I'm calling it, of these role models. And we have 42 leaders of our workplaces in the UK at the moment who have put their name to the list. And if you want to look at the website, I'll put the URL up as I'm talking, and like most men, I am terrible at multitasking. There's the website. You can find, if you look at Leaderboard 2019, you can see the positions of these 42 trailblazing role models. We have partners in the professions, we have CEOs, we have the chief of the London Fire Service, we have people from banks, we have small business leaders, because this is not just a large business problem. So there's been a lot of activity on LinkedIn, and please do follow me at Rob Stephenson, with these role models sharing their stories. And what we want to do is encourage other leaders to speak out and share their lived experience, get behind the agenda, and really create workplaces where it's okay to ask for help if you're experiencing mental illness. We've also had a number of our role models have their portraits taken, calling the Inside Out exhibition. But it's not simply portraits. It's portraits with quotes that show the experience they've had, the challenges they've faced, but also the impact they might have had on their workplace or society. So I'm very proud of that, and we'll be releasing that at a launch event on Wednesday night. So why are senior leader role models so important when everybody who speaks out is a role model? Everybody creates a ripple that it's okay to talk about your mental health and your mental ill health. But as I was mentioning, senior leaders can really facilitate culture change. So I'd like to give you one example here from my list of role models. A managing director of a business called Cicero, a chap called Mark Twigg, spoke out about his experiences of depression about 2 years ago. Immediately that allowed other people in the business to reach out, talk about their challenges, and in some cases receive adjustments. So they've stayed in the workplace when that might not have previously happened. But then over the years, over the last 2 years, they've introduced this change where you can prioritize well-being. And they've introduced an initiative called Take Two, where in a very busy client-driven business, anybody in the workplace can take 2 hours each week to look after their mental well-being. They could go for a walk, they could have a long lunch, they could go to the gym, but they can take 2 hours to prioritize well-being and recover from the stresses of life and the workplace. Fantastic. So we've got some plans in 2020 to grow the UK leaderboard, to add categories for carers, for allies, people who are championing the agenda, but to take it global, to do a European list, to do an Americas list, to do an Asian list, and extend it to sports professionals, entertainers, and run some awards. Because the more noise we can get around this, the more we can smash that stigma. Just like to touch on some mental health narratives. This was an image I took from Google Images about a year ago when I put into the search engine mental health. Now, I didn't say I put in mental illness. I didn't put in mental ill health. I put in mental health. And these are the sorts of images that we've been seeing. Now, I think it is changing, but this is an image of struggling, an image of anguish. That is not an aspirational image for health. So we need to change our narrative around how we're terming mental health, because mental health is not that, but stigma and fear is leading us to believe that it's that. Some brief context: 1 in 4 of us will experience a mental health condition in our lifetimes. 15% of the population in the UK will be experiencing anxiety or depression right now. Mental illness can take 15 to 20 years off your life. Suicide in the UK is the biggest killer of middle-aged men, and we lose a life globally to suicide every 40 seconds. 50% of mental health problems and challenges are established by the age of 14, 75% by 24. Yet what are we doing in schools? What are we doing to look after the mental health of our teachers? In the UK, the cost per employee is £2,000 per head, and the cost of the UK economy is 105 billion. Staggering. But the thing is, we are all on a continuum. We all have mental health. We all oscillate from somewhere between thriving down to struggling, and where we're engaged to disengaged. We all experience bereavement, grief, relationship breakup. These all contribute to periods of mental ill health. It's not just about the label or the diagnosis. And if we were to look at where people are at any given one time on that continuum, only about 17% are truly flourishing. The same amount broadly have got a diagnosis, have got a condition. So 60% have moderate mental health. And so 65% of us can actually just focus on improving our well-being and be happier, more productive members of society. But what stops us? Well, I think businesses are underinvested in preventative, proactive mental well-being because of how do we make the business case? Do we know the return on investment? A lot of the budgets that we see spent that do exist for mental well-being in the workplace are on recovery services, which I don't disagree with, but I think there's a bigger gain to be made if we can invest in preventative healthcare, preventative mental health care. So I'm involved in a project called Better Space, which is a marketplace designed to solve this market failure by helping organizations and individuals work out what works for them. And this we've broken down into various categories or pillars of well-being. So sleep, social connection, inspiring others, recovery, stress management, meaningful activity and exercise. And we believe that if we can actually get enough people using this platform, think of it a bit like an Airbnb that stimulates people to try different things, we can work out what the actual return on investment is. And so that's my role in this project, is to bring together 10 large organizations who are prepared to put 10,000 people through this platform and work with one of the analytics firms to say, look, can we go from there to tracking well-being to then tracking actual performance in monetary terms? And can we get that data and can we release that to the market to say, look, if you are that CFO that needs to see a business case, here it is, we'll give it to you. Because we need more investment into stopping people falling into that struggling category and ease the burden on our health systems. So I kind of summarized it there, really. The other thing that certainly I'm looking to focus on in the UK is actually looking at how preventative well-being solutions are taxed. So at the moment, they're a taxable benefit that the employee or the employer would have to pay on behalf of the employee. Whereas if we truly want to stimulate preventative healthcare and preventative healthcare in the mental health space, why not make these benefits tax-free? A bit like the Cycle to Work scheme. So one big aspirational item on my to-do list is to try and get this onto the agenda of lobbying government to remove the tax burden, thus stimulate investment. So I'd like to conclude by just whizzing through how I use the Firstbeat lifestyle assessment. And I found myself actually weaving it into talks on mental health and preventative mental health, and really focusing on one of those pillars of well-being, which is how we balance stress with recovery. So this was a really interesting case study that I did with an employee of the business before, with permission, presenting it to the whole company. And this was a day in the life of this employee, and there are a couple of things to point out. Really, this person was really good at managing well-being, very self-aware, actually got a mental health challenge, which had taught them to be quite self-aware. So there's periods of exercise in the day, walking to pick up lunch, I was pretty impressed with, walking to the office in the morning. But then I'd like to draw your attention to the last note at the bottom, which is a mouse attack. So actually, whilst wearing the Firstbeat monitor, this individual opened a cupboard at home and a mouse jumped out at him. And so I talk about our physiological systems and nervous system being programmed to run away from a saber-toothed tiger. He was actually attacked by a mouse. And we can see the physiological response. The heart rate jumps, he goes into a stress state, and it takes a good 30 minutes or so for him to recover. But that was a fantastic live result that we could talk about in the meeting afterwards. On day 2, again, a good day. He's still got those moments of recovery during the day. I really enjoyed the little bit at the start of his day that he woke up and read the news for 30 minutes before getting into the stress of his day. And there's that green restorative bit at the start. Fantastic. I also note that he had 4 units of alcohol, which for some would kill their sleep and kill their recovery in sleep, whereas for this individual it didn't. The next day he had 16 units of alcohol, which absolutely did, but he recognises the balance of all of that. So this is quite a nice case study I've used to talk to people about how they might take those breaks in the day, how they might take those walks to get lunch, how they might do things for themselves during the course of the day. But of course, we need the permission of ourselves and our organisations to enable us to do this. And that was his overall summary. I won't dwell on that, but you can see that his overall physiological resources have grown during those 3 days, despite a 16-pint binge on day 3. So I'd like to leave you with a conversation I had with my daughter, because when I started to be open about my own challenges, I realised I needed a daughter. And so my daughter's Gabby. She was 6 at the time, and you can see we were having a conversation there about mental health, and she's put a little L above the M. So she's very concerned about the health of our lentils. So I asked Gabby, how can we look after our mental health? And she said, literally, no accidents, don't hit your head, which I thought was a good answer. It's to the point. So I said, what about our brain, Gabby? How could we look after our brain? And she said, well, use it, think a lot. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is good. These are very to the point answers from a 6-year-old at the time. So I said to Gabby, if you woke up one day and you were feeling like something was wrong, you weren't quite yourself, and you just felt really sad, what would you do? She said, Daddy, I would find someone who I love and I would tell them. I would talk. Find someone who you love and tell them. Talk. And then I said, Gabby, if you were in the playground and somebody there was sitting in the corner, one of your friends, not their usual self, not running around, looking sad, looking withdrawn, what would you do? And she looked at me like I was a complete idiot. She said, Daddy, I would go over and I would see if they're okay. I would see if they're okay. So we can learn a huge amount from our children about issues that we overcomplicate as adults and we overcomplicate in society. The two things there, the advice from Gabby, is talk if you're feeling like something's wrong mentally, and go and ask someone if they're okay, if they're not looking themselves. And in the workplace, we have a great opportunity to do this. So thank you for sticking with me at the start. Thank you so much for listening. We've got time for a few questions, I think. So please ask anything you like and I will try and answer. Okay, so great talk. Question: I have a similar program called Burnout Prevention for Companies. How would you go about contacting companies? Well, that's a big one. Yeah, I think that this issue is interesting because well-being and mental health is relatively new to the agenda of companies, and it will sit with various different budget holders from HR to well-being heads. I think you've just got to be quite active and really map out in your target group of companies who the likely buyers would be. Be active on things like LinkedIn, do webinars, do talks like this, and really get your message out there. And good luck. I hope it goes well for you. Any other questions? Pleasure. Okay. Well, it looks, oh no, there's another one coming through, so I'll hang on for that question. How much help do I believe that Firstbeat has provided? I think Firstbeat's a really interesting product because physiological stress and recovery is really, really important. I think one of the issues that we are facing, which is burnout of people, Firstbeat can give you some signs that you might be heading into burnout. But I think for me, where I find it really interesting personally, but I find it very, very powerful to show presentations like I've just shown you to groups of people and show the benefits of, look, this is how stressed we are in our working day. Can we take those moments of recovery? Can we go and walk around the block for coffee? Can we eat our lunch away from the desk? Can we do a little bit of exercise in the day? And I think it's a really powerful tool to show and demonstrate that you don't need to make too many adjustments to your life to be much more balanced and recover from those those questions. So for me, a pretty powerful tool. So thank you. I can't hear Tina, so Tina's asked me to conclude after this question. But apologies once again for the delayed start. But really appreciate you all listening. And contact me on LinkedIn. I'm Rob Stephenson. You can find me. Love to be followed. So please do make contact. And have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone also. I don't know if I should cry or laugh. This is so crazy that it happened like that some of you can hear me and others can't. But thank you, Rob, very much. And thank you all of you who showed up here. And the podcast will be available in just a couple of days on our website. So if you weren't able to listen to all of that, you can find that on the website, and you'll be able to find some other podcasts of different webinars there as well. Stay tuned to our other webinars. We have one coming up next month about supercompensation of life that will be running from here from Firstbeat. And yeah, thank you for joining us today, and hopefully hope to see you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.